Hello. We shall not wait for anyone else. Well, let us start. Otherwise, we shall never start. My name is Oleg Kupreev. Hello, and today I have an emergency presentation, extraordinary presentation about the 802.11 standard that we all know as Wi-Fi. And I'll tell you about the advantages, the deficiencies, and low-level Wi-Fi activity, the chips, drivers, core level, and tell you this is not a comprehensive research, but rather an attempt to show how little we know about this 802.11. And this is kind of an attempt to stir you to study Wi-Fi and the standard. And the standard is 1,000 pages. And I recommend you to enjoy at leisure. So last Friday, I presented at DevCom Moscow, and now talking to a wider audience. So this is my brief plan. I'll consider the following topics. Conditions that do not depend on us, that the antenna, how it looks inside and outside, and what it gives us. Hardware, software, RF, both Russian Federation and radio frequency. Channel plan. And though the audience is very little, but I'm going to ask questions. So once you know the answer, raise your hand. So let us start with the first question. So what's the best weather to break Wi-Fi? And substantiate your reply. Any answers? Good weather, clear weather. Why? In fact, weather matters much more. I'll remind you, so what happens to a big microwave at high frequency? So in the microwave, it gets heated, the product. If we have high humidity, rain, so breaking Wi-Fi is uncomfortable because the water will absorb the high frequency irradiation and will be heating. So that's what we're going to talk about. As I told you, water and RF equals a microwave oven, a hamster in a microwave oven. So the weather matters. So first, the name was war driving, but now it's walking, war sitting, war walking. When we sit in a coffee shop and try to hack. So the better the weather, the more chance to, process 1,000 people without getting frozen. And the weather matters for DFS. Who heard those letters? No, if you did not hear that, I did not work for nothing. So, and besides, there are happy hours for hacking. We can hack any WETP anytime. We don't even need clients, so we can break at Cafe Latte. Why WPS is better for hacking at night? Who is going to tell me? No. Not exactly. It's much more mundane than you were trying to invent. In the radio wave world, there is a notion of interference. So, for instance, we are hacking an access point on the 6th channel, but we have a very active neighbor who loves soap operas, and his access point is on 5th channel. We shall get overlapping. So the only clean channel is 1.6, but then we are getting great noise, and we shall reduce the pin check speed. It will conflict with our neighbor, so it's better to break WPS. So first, there is less noise in the radio environment, or if we have a pin limit, we can use MDK3. So if we DDoS the point every 5 minutes, when you're not asleep, somehow a person will see that this his soap opera doesn't work. Probably he will think, who is his neighbor? WPA personnel is better to hack in the evening because we need clients. And we have peak time in the evening. Most of the people are active in the evening. So something like, 9 a.m. In corporations, you can see IPS IDs that will log your activity. For instance, if you plan to hack a large corporation with YAOS and host APDVP patch, so most of the ADSs will see it, so it's better just to wait until people get to the working place, turn on notebooks, people start working, and that's exactly when we try. And then there are some other factors that you can never predict, like your neighbors, because we cannot select our neighbors, noise interference, then random numbers generators, and some specifics, and the provider in our area. We cannot control, but sometimes we can use it. So, for a start, let's talk about antenna types. We all know the directed antennas. If you hacked Wi-Fi, you know the second type, Udayagi, directional antennas. And more professionals like panel, parabolic, and sector antennas. So the three latest types are used by providers and cost quite a lot. So for the ordinary hacker with a budget, with small budget like 3,000 ruble, two first types are available. Have you ever dismantle an antenna? Have you taken apart the antenna? I always thought that Russian people are very curious and, trying to understand how it's made. I'll show you. In fact, antennas look like this inside. This is the classic antenna, and the one, this one is more contemporary, speaking about the amplification ratio. If you take the little one and the bigger one, what's the difference? For instance, with the stronger antenna will have two of such things. We have 6 dBm permitted. So if we look at the diagram, directional diagram, it's omnidirectional. We are looking in horizontal cross-section. So probably when you just set up your home Wi-Fi, it will emit in this cross-section. So if you try to put antenna horizontally, what are you getting? You are getting a vertical So once your Wi-Fi is not working properly, look at the screen. I tell you how to fix it. Some people even, put the antenna in a very weird way. So look at this Udayagi antenna. You can buy in China at AliExpress wholesale for the old school, for the conservatives. You can assemble. There's a program Udayagi calculator that allows you to do it yourself, to calculate what antenna you need. Udayagi, named after a scientist who calculated, who actually did the math and calculated the size and the shape of the antenna. So the direction, as you can see, is different. And with a small angle. If we want to work in a specific place, you need to use a directional antenna. And then let us consider the hardware that we might have and what hardware is better used for attacks. So most hackers don't even know what software is included. Then use the wrong. They don't understand how hardware works. If you want to prove I'm wrong, so tell me who used our Surfer MG program or others that we are all hackers. This is the basic program. So go and study the ABC of hacking. It allows you to launch, and then RSurf binds Wi-Fi map to the normal TCP IP port, and you can work in a distributed manner, put several boxes, and you have one centralized program that works as CPU unit TCP, PP, whatever PP. And we shall continue speaking about the hardware. So TP-Link 722N is one of the best cards because it works cheap, works well. It costs a little, works well, and the best math has the best math. So this is proven. If you want to start but you don't know what to buy, that's the part for you. And then you start with these cards to understand how Wi-Fi works. I recommend you to buy 2 cards. You can use one to attack and the other to monitor. At least you will understand how it really happens or why an attack fails. That's my recommendation. And then for different attacks, you select different hardware. For WPS hack, you better use Alpha AWS 036AH. And so nothing better has been invented. There was who has Alpha? So few. What do you have to do before you start working with this card? No. What's the difference between this and this card? You can put any antenna. Who said power? That's what I thought. 90% of hackers I spoke use Alpha, just, dumbly. So the beauty of Alpha is that it has amplifier and transceiver. We can add 30 dBm, but as you know, to turn it on, you need to enter a command. And as we have limits in Russia in terms of distribution of frequency and power, and in America it's FCC. So we have a certain limit. In order to turn on 30 dBm, you need to change the region from Russia to another and then turn on 30 dBm. So I'll tell you the news why old scripts are not working anymore. So let's go on. The WPS brute is better because it has amplifier and for emitting. So it's important. The speed and power is important so that we could transmit further. For hacking, WPA on dials and capture handshake capturing. Have you done it? You all did it. Do you understand why? We have MIMO card, MIMO card. Why one of the two cards should be MIMO? Because you do it on any card that can just send packages from someone else's third-party MAC address. But I recommend catching on a card that has 2 or 3 antennas. In this case, you wouldn't believe, but the number of antennas, if you don't just add some cheap Chinese crap, but it increases your chance, it doubles your chances. You can also double check. One thing is to cut off your neighbor next door. Or another thing, when you cut off your neighbor who is 100 meters away from you. So take any card with the Ralink chipset and driver stack MAC 8211. And then any Mac compatible card. And if we want to attack a client, you all know Karma or Pineapple. You can take and make a pineapple with the router. You don't have to buy a pineapple, but you can just make it. And there are easily middleware models. If you love to spend money and do nothing, you can buy Wi-Fi pineapple, but I wouldn't recommend, because yes, one thing when you catch a client and put it through you, but when you launch a cell strip on this hardware, you can maximum process 2 clients without delay, because the platform does not allow you. And then I suggest you buy Otroy instead of Wi-Fi Pineapple. It has 4 USB ports, and you can add the cards and Metasploit. So Wi-Fi Pineapple will never be autonomous. You cannot just leave it somewhere and go. But so Droid can allow that. So you all know about Kali Net Hunter that we can put at any Google Nexus, and then TP-Link, use TP-Link 722, and so on the mobile platforms where we can have an ejection capacitor, there are 2 cell phones that allow you, Nokia N900 and N9. Unfortunately, you know what happened to Nokia, so I believe we cannot expect good news soon. So software is quite standard. Linux distributives to hack Wi-Fi. I use Black Arch because it has the freshest copies. In the open source world, no one owes anything. So we have the zoo, you know, and you better keep it in Black Arch. So have you ever used Horst? No. I really recommend, I strongly recommend. Very good software. Unlike this Kismet, it doesn't delay and has an analyzer. If you want to understand how Wi-Fi works, start with this program. It's little, light, and can be put everywhere, Linux or whatever. Then River WPS, developed by Ray Kaufner, then WPS pin SH, pin generator, more or less automated for dealing for others. And then with this thing, I got four. It took me 1 minute to hack and catch the pin at first attempt from my neighbors. Do you know what is Pixie WPS? How come? Still, that's another WPS vulnerability, and we can influence P, R, and G. So Pixie WPS is vulnerability that allows you to root WPS offline. With Pixie WPS, if you have vulnerability in WPS pin generation, so then we can hack in 1 minute. It's all integrated to the Wi-Fi T4 because the new thingies are embedded in it. So go home and test on your neighbors. Oh my God. One of them is not my neighbor. So when you want to handle the many people at McDonald's and the other places so who remember the open Wi-Fi and other like Karma Manna host APD WPE, and who has ever connected to Metro free Wi-Fi? Don't be shy.
Metro Wi-Fi. And who removed this network afterwards? Who removed it? Actually, if you connected to Metro free Wi-Fi once and it stayed in your list of saved networks, you can easily catch your cell phone. So hypothetically, for example, we hacked our neighbor. Yes, in her interface, so you can see only one AC, so only one name of the network. But since in all routers, so we have the standard KPD, which supports the command line, so we can create several SIDs. And I love it when we hack the router. And what in practice, it's very funny. So then the neighbor Zina IP addresses used up. And so, so there are many of you. But 200 people in a day, that's a lot for fun, who are hacking around, making people unhappy and unfortunate. And so then, so just I so I went all over, canvassed all of them, and found all the Wi-Fi hacking effort and collected it all, and it's very impressive. Lots of numbers. Thus, in order to hack WP spin, so they're all here. So it's all open source. If you think of something new, if you want to add or change something, so write to me. I'll be happy, and I'll be happy with your feedback. And as you understand, so we don't know much about Wi-Fi. So what is the speed of Wi-Fi? What frequency of Wi-Fi? Do you remember? And then this is not a 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. But what other speeds, what other frequencies is Wi-Fi active? So then a month ago, I thought, so there are two frequencies. No, there are more frequencies. So for example, it's all open domain, so you can check it on Wikipedia, and you can just read all the frequencies. And what is IPS? IPS is an intellectual transport system. So when there are trucks driving around and they're connected between each other, so with the help of Wi-Fi, only the carrier frequency is changed. So the carrier frequency is 700 megahertz, and that certainly gives certain advantage. If we reduce the frequency, what happens? Yes, to increase in distance. Yeah, the lower carrier frequency. So we increase the distance but reduce the speed. But there is not much information transmitting between the trucks. And so then USM license 900 megahertz, and for 3.6 gigahertz, 2.4 gigahertz. So when when the apartments are alarmed, so they use public security. So it goes all over Wi-Fi. So this is the standard. So it's what you have to have at home, because 2.4 gigahertz is not enough anyway. And so 2.4 gigahertz. It's all just used up by the incorrect tuning of Wi-Fi. Did you hear anything about the channel plan? So then there's even such high carrier frequencies like 60 gigahertz. It's HDMI over Wi-Fi, but built with the help of beamforming technology. So when we form the beam, so when we point the beam in a certain direction. Okay, channels, plans, and the world. So when when Wi-Fi was just taking off the ground, and so there was different frequencies, 2.4 gigahertz channels. Originally, so we had only 1, 6, and 11, so that do not overlap. The channels, they don't overlap. When we select a channel, so we select the central frequency, but it does not. It means that we do not impinge on an adjacent channel. So because if they overlap, so you can get information from all three. So, but to do the multi-frequency Wi-Fi sniffer, we need to listen to channel 6. And then 8.2 appeared. This new standard appeared. And then we need to remember that in different countries there are different limits. Let's say, so not to avoid overlapping the channels. So that's what we refer to, channel plan 15913. So it means that you put only one of the channels at your entry point, access point only. So channel plan is a recommended channel for your access point. But as you know, no one uses it. That's why all our channels are overlapped and they're noisy. So then bandwidth, they increased to 40 megahertz, 150 megabits, but because of the widening of the bandwidth. So then the channel plan that we spoke about. This is for all civilized world, as you see. So was 1.6, then 11.14, then 1.13, all these overlappings. This is the interference I spoke about. But in the event when we had channel 13, so we can come very close with the minimum interference. We can just put another channel that does not intersect and does not interfere with any other channel. And that is why, so this non-overlapping channels, so you can see them for 2.5 gigahertz WLAN. Since channel 11 is forbidden, then channel plan is different. There are only 3 non-overlapping channels, and the 40 megahertz only 1 channel not overlapping. And then what we got, so we had to have 1.1611, for the rest of the world is 15913. But in real life, what is a channel plan? So these are the 3 misleading ideas. So I would put 40 megahertz bandwidth, and it will give me more speed. No, because 40 megahertz, what you cannot, it will increase the interference with your neighboring channels, and you will overlap more interference. So 40 megahertz, only 2 fit in. So if we explore any Wi-Fi program and look at the adjacent channel, so 3/4 of the adjacent channel is interference with the neighbors. So that's why it's very misleading. Then if I put more power and at the access point, it will give more speed. No, because Wi-Fi did not provide for. So there's no mechanism originally built into the system to take care of such conflicts. So that's why to reduce the power, so point A, point B, if they connect, then we have interference. So we have noise, lots of problems. But if we reduce the power, we reduce the interference, and as a result, we do not spend time to resend the packages that disappeared due to interference. So Wi-Fi should be tuned in a way so that it should cover only your environment and no more than that. So this is not good if Wi-Fi just goes outside your apartment. It should cover only your space, because it means that your Wi-Fi works worse, and then you will interfere with your neighbors. And more antennas, more speed? No. The thing is that the Chinese started to do the routers 6MT, but if you look at the chip specification, it supports only 1 or 2 antennas. What they do, they put multiplexers. So it supports only 2, but they put 6 antennas. That's it. And MIMO is more sophisticated technology. If you have 4 antennas and 3 devices, then then the device with 2 antennas will be using 2 router antennas, and 1 antenna will be using 1 antenna each. And so that's why it's multiplexer. It does mean so the math doesn't work out. So your 4 antennas will be working worse than 2 antennas. This is how it looks at the lab. At the lab. So ideally, that's what it's like. But this is in reality. That's what it looks like. And this is not the worst, because since no one knows anything about it, and it grows exponentially, and so the number of Wi-Fi gauges, it goes up and up and up, and eventually it brings about such. This is the way the interference looks like. And so if you think that if I bring the antenna closer to the window to hack the neighboring house, so because it's better to go to the balcony, then you can hack your neighbor house. Your neighboring house. It's better to hack outdoors. So then we need good weather. It's not to freeze to death. Yeah, so then GBFC, so high from them. So that's what Wi-Fi looks like. So everything just is very slow, nothing works. And the 5 gigahertz around the world should save us because more channels, more speed. No. So there is another detrimental factor that does not make it any faster. So in the United States, everything is allowed. So you can do whatever you want. But it's in theory only. Before we talk about Russia, so because in Russia I decided to take this information to write it down, and because this is an instruction, that's an order. So not all channels are allowed, but most of them are allowed. Yeah. So all this boils down to this: that channel 36, 64, 136, 165 are allowed. And this is the United States. And why the weather matters? Because the weather matters. What is DFS? It impacts the weather. So there is this weather radar. Weather radar works on the frequency of 5 megahertz. So the radars exist in Japan and other countries, and so the access point. So they analyze the level of noise in the frequency of 5 megahertz, and so then they work in blocks. And so if you select any option where to put the weather radar, so then there is very few opportunities to place a radar. Then country limitations, depending on the country. So they are put on the database CRDA, wireless DB. In order to go around the limitations, all we had to do VRX command, and then a command takes power 30 command to hack it. And so now it doesn't work that way. Why? Because the legislation of Bolivia changed, and now you cannot have 30 dBms. And if you put your Wi-Fi scripters, you need this to exchange BO by BZ, BO to BZ. BZ is still allowed, so bypass. And so the best would be just to put together your own core and develop from 1 hertz to 5 gigahertz, and the power, and then put it and factor it into the kernel, and kernel recompilation. And for example, this Linux project, so there are so many limitations. And so the best hack is the patch of the driver. And if you are not a hacker but hacker and admin, so then you can rebuild CRDA with your own keys and be happy. You understand what System D? Does it ring any bells? Does anyone have System D? Other first victims? System MD. System D is not alone. It came with the change of the names of interfaces. What VLP 3S0, not bad. That's the name of the interface. But then it brought about that all the scripts, so the parts, the Python scripts, and also that determined the interfaces, listing of interfaces. Starts with an M, so they just broke owing to this system. So that's MOMO. Now it's VPL 3S or something. But this name of the interface, so if you have your card in the USB hub, so you cannot key it in with your hands. It's just too much. And there's too. And if, by the way, someone used one of the best libraries, so it doesn't work now anymore. And, System D requires rewriting of many tools to hack 802.11, and System D is the site, so you can have a good time, enjoy yourself. How System D so ate up half of the system. Then so now it's getting more difficult. Does anyone did any research on driver.ru? Are there any hackers who know what to hack? Who know what to hack? So then Atheris company they're good for one reason, because they opened up the drivers, so they outsourced them. That's HTC, and then firmware they opened up, and so all the software, it's all open. Only hardware is not open. And why I'm telling you that some math is good there, because all this you can connect it all and see how it works. But what we don't know is when you use these small cards, we can do the spectral scan. The spectral scans are very expensive hardware. Fluke Metrics company manufactures them. Very cool company that sells very expensive scanners. More advanced option for this for $7,000. So, but you can do it for 1,000 rubles, but you need to patch the drivers. Patch the drivers. So there is a link, and what to do next, you know. So you can just do and figure out what to do with patches. So we know that it's on channel 1, 13, etc. This is the same channel, and the limitations on channels, they are put into the drivers. And if you take a H9K driver, you can take it, you can through channels, you can lower it to the -19 to lower the carrier frequency to 1300 megahertz, and work on a lower carrier frequency, and which is available, which is free. And anyone watches this, and so the hardware village, so they will be tasked to hack the wireless, and maybe some things will come very useful. Then in the chip ATH9K driver, so there is an amplifier. It's not a good amplifier, but there is an amplifier. It's not just an average. It's put into the chip, so you can even turn it on. But it's disconnected in the drivers. But if you patch the drivers, you can get whatever you want. You can reduce the bandwidth to 5 megahertz instead of 20 megahertz, and then you can just go around different problems with interference. And spectral scan wise, I'm not sure because I've read almost so the entire list of drivers, and I don't know on which hardware it will work reliably. I think that it's the same IR chips, 92X6 chips, maybe all of them, and maybe another set of chips, and there's more advanced types of chips. So there are links. So I don't know what to say on this. And there are patches. If anyone wants to participate, to make sure that all these patches and all this knowledge would turn into some kind of distributed effort. If you want to help, so here are my contacts, because I really need help, because I cannot do it all by myself. So spectral scan plot looks like this, so the software that builds it, and so you can download it, and so no problem with that at all. And then advanced, without driver patching. But we need just to build the kernel correctly, ATH9K, and then you have, then you get initially the next chapter, sector, and ATH9K, HTC AP, mode client, etc. Then you need to see what the content of the patches, and to see what's going on. So there's a special register which contains number of mistakes, for example. Another register contains something else. And so we don't, not many know about that. Colin Hunter. So do you have anyone, Colonel Hunter, on Mana X Evil Access Point? Does anyone have this? So anyway, so Topolink 7255N. So this is famous white adapter. So then in this is proof. So there's for 7 clients. And no more than 7 clients. You cannot catch more than 7 clients. So then you have to change firmware. But to change the firmware, I have not yet grown to that level. But I think that will certainly get to that point eventually to change the firmware. But you can remove the noise, noise reduction function. You can cancel it. And, so, for example, if there's extreme distances, if there is a noise is about a certain level, so then the machine thinks that I don't see it. But if you remove the noise quenching function, so then you can just hack into the Wi-Fi, which is 20-30 meters further, and so you can hack into that Wi-Fi. Yeah, so then some have MacBooks, and they love MacBooks, and so that's, and they need to figure out how to operate MacBooks. But if we look at hardware and software, so we have pretty much the same stuff. So we have injection, we can monitor this, and so we can do the same, almost the same, but we cannot. And so we have River WPS, crack, and G, TCD from Mac port. We have everything. And so then utility, then you can use this utility, and you can manage your card and put it in the monitor mode, put it on the monitor. So I linked it to, so then OSX airport, then sniff port, and then my card airport scan -XML, and then it gives me the list of the closest Wi-Fi access points. And so we have some bindings for this utility. It's all there. So I made a small SCAPI framework, my famous frameworks to work on many channel Wi-Fi systems. If you didn't work with SCAPI, it's a patched version of SCAPI for OS 6. Then another point, very interesting, some private frameworks. So they are in the file of private frameworks, but we came to the conclusion that then OS 6, it's not that it has no security, but if you dealt with this BOPC, so we can always upload these private frameworks in one line, and then you immediately can, and then immediately you get additional opportunities. Let's look at the threats. So that MOS Metro free, you know that. So how can we hack WPS? So you need to do pingen. We take pingen for many programs that know the algorithm of generation of WPS is for different access points, D-Link, Huawei, Kinetic, etc. They know. So we're using MAC address to learn about pingen. But if you fail to generate PIN, so then you can use Pixie WPS. You can hack someone. It will take you a minute to do that. And then if it doesn't work, and then you have to iterate WPS, it may take hours. So it's better just to pins are much more interesting to guess. What's the main difference between Karma and Mana? Has anyone used Karma? I used Karma. So very few people who hack Wi-Fi. Okay, who used Mana? Mana, only one guy. Karma and mana, they are programs that implement attack, that carry the majority of Wi-Fi or GSM networks. So they have one thing in common. So then a counterfeit of fake Wi-Fi base stations. You can create it, and those access point, fake access point, create a fake access point. So, for example, yes, so then yes, I'm most Metro free Wi-Fi, or yes, I'm McDonald's free Wi-Fi, etc. What's the difference between mana and karma? In November, and so if karma works, so we can take two phones, so two lists of different Wi-Fi. So one guy has one list of networks, another set of networks, and so then these cell phones will see, this machine will see the list of lines that both guys' phones have. That's why karma is very visible, and so we have 25 access points, for example, and another one has 25 access points, and that machine will see them all. And that is why the mana does the same thing. And so, but this personalizes it, identifies it. It develops a PNL by each client, so makes a PNL. So, for example, so Michael will not see the access points that Vasya has, and that it allows to avoid when we have more than 100 access points. So, for example, some cell phones may freeze. So, for example, small iPhone, more than 100 SIDs, and it won't work well. And then we don't have dozen PP. Do we have any dozen PP? And so dozen PP. And so he knows how to hack Wi-Fi's. It works well in Moscow. Or those are the mistakes of the internet provider.
Вот, если вы в курсе, многие провайдеры ставят предустановленные пароли.
So there are providers who preset the Wi-Fi password.
Что общего у всех абонентов?
So what's in common that all the users have? Some operators like to use default passwords as a telephone number, the fixed line phone number. So do you understand? This is great data. So this guy was not lazy. He took the yellow pages, and then it takes him 5 attempts. I will not name this operator, but you probably understand. If around you you have many access points with the cell phone numbers, you
Очень жаль, что его нет. Не знаю, надо будем пиво поставить. Советую, рекомендую, очень классная атака.
So I recommend you this type of attack.
Вот он, котик. Я вам уже, в принципе, рассказывал, но котик будет. Вот, это разница. Ну, соответственно, это, в принципе, по большей части все.
So I guess this is it.
Это всякие мои там скрипты.
Now look at the website where I put my scripts, and I'll be happy to get any assistance from you. And DC 7499, that's Moscow. That's what the Sergey, the guy with camera, started. That's our group. We keep meeting once in a while and read and talk to each other. So come, we'll have fun questions.
На этом, в принципе, все.
That's it. Thank you.